Am I
Sorry,
live?
you broke up there, Natalie.
We're live. So welcome back to another episode of the Tackle Box, which is what we've decided to call it, because we're going to tackle a whole lot of issues.
This is episode 4, I believe.
Yep. So I'm Natalie.
I'm Robert Brockway, and this is our guest for today, Rob
Sorry.
Tiller. This is our guest today, Rob Tiller. Rob, do you want to introduce yourself? Of course, Rob could hear us fine when we were testing earlier. Can you hear us, Rob? Oh, no. It was working perfectly. We retested it over the last 15 or 20 minutes.
My signal.
No worries at all. While Rob's testing his signal, I'll just give a quick rundown of what we're going to talk about today. Of course, in Australia.
Oh, hey guys. Yeah, thanks for. Yeah, I can hear you. My signal is. My phone is possessed by artificial intelligence.
The timing was perfect. It was about a minute after we started. No problems. Lovely place.
Find a spot where he's not lagging.
What was that? Sorry, Natalie?
Find a spot where he's not lagging. If anybody had any doubt that we don't go live, please advise that through.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, you are sort of freezing a little bit.
Okay. Well, it says I've got 3 bars. Sorry, guys, this is embarrassing.
Yeah, you're right. It was funny how we were talking away for about 20 minutes before we were live, and there was no problem at all. Yeah.
Like I said, my phone is possessed by the Apple devil.
So, Rob, do you want to introduce yourself?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. I can hear you fine. But I'm worried you can't hear us.
I can hear you. Yeah. Yeah. So I'm a counselor. I work a lot with men going through separation. I work a lot with couples. I've been doing this for about 15 years. I have a lot of sympathy for men's situation at the moment in terms of doing it hard in a lot of different aspects of their lives, and that's pretty much me in a nutshell, professionally anyway. I'm from Texas. That's where my accent's from.
But you've settled in Australia, haven't you?
So I'm a cowboy settled in Perth.
Nice. Yes. So tonight, or this afternoon, for those in Perth, we're going to be talking about Brittany Higgins, who's been in the Australian media quite a bit over the last couple of weeks. So Brittany has made an allegation that she was raped in Parliament House, and this has it's really set off a political firestorm in Australia. So it may not be. I don't know if it's widely reported overseas, but certainly in Australia, this is all over the media at the moment, and we're learning more and more every day. So we thought we would get together and have a chat about it tonight.
Let's do it.
Okay, so for tonight, Rob Tiller's going to be Rob. Robert, you're going to be Robert.
Sounds good.
Because it's the daylight side of me.
So
keep us straight, Natalie.
That's right. I thought I'd start by giving a quick rundown of of essentially some of the dates involved. So apparently, Brittany Higgins was working for a minister here in Australia, a government minister, and had been working there for about 4 weeks. And as reported in the media, she has taken a taxi. She was apparently quite late. She said she was quite drunk, wanted to go home. She took a taxi with another staff member who apparently lived in a similar direction. They were going to sort of share the cost of the taxi. And she then ended up at Parliament House. So she's saying she expected to go home. She turned up at Parliament House, where they both worked. They'd gone into the building. He had his ID apparently and was able to sign her in as a guest. She went then. They both then went into an office where she was actually
Reynolds'
working.
office.
That's right, exactly. It's not clear whether he was working in the same office. It was in that's right, in I think Senator Reynolds' office. This was the 22nd of March, 2019. So it was a Friday night, and they've been in the office for a while then they've been there together until the early hours of Saturday the 23rd. Now, the male staff member, who hasn't been publicly identified, left in the early hours of the 23rd, the Saturday, and security guards, who of course knew she was still in the building, have checked in on her in the morning and reportedly found her in a state of partial undress in the office, and that has kicked off a disciplinary hearing. On the Monday, I believe she then attended a meeting. Now, when I first read her about the reports, I believe the report said that she made a disclosure during the second meeting that she'd been raped. But it seems that, at least the more recent reports seem to be suggesting that might have been the first meeting. So it's a bit unclear to me which of those two is the case. Anyway, she's subject to a disciplinary hearing and has made an allegation that she's been raped by the male staff.
And set the Liberal Party on fire.
Absolutely. So the male staff member was then resigned, was encouraged to resign. Not anything to do with the allegation.
They weren't on a date night then.
Absolutely not. No. They'd been to work function apparently, and she thought she was going home and ended up at Parliament House, and then they've gone into the office and spent some time there. And then, and she's still been in. He's left, and she's still been there in the morning. That much everyone seems to agree on.
Okay.
Yep. And she's been subject. He has actually been encouraged to resign. Nothing to do with an allegation of rape or sexual assault. Rather, apparently, even going into the building after hours in the manner that they did was enough to get him basically to ask to leave. So he's left that day. She's been then subject to disciplinary hearing, which then raised the allegation of rape.
Okay.
But
so then it wasn't a date night, and they were sharing a cab together, coming back from a work function.
Exactly.
Neither one of them were supposed to be in the building. But
exactly.
He had
they had
a
no
white
reason.
card,
Yeah.
and they were both, degrees of intoxicated. It sounds like.
That's right. Exactly. That's right.
Okay.
Yeah. So Brittany Higgins has stated quite a bit later, that she's woken up to find him on top of her, raping her. That's, I believe, the allegation she then made at the disciplinary hearing. Whether that was on Monday or a couple of days later, it isn't clear to me. But she was reportedly encouraged to approach the police about this. The police did discuss the matter with her informally, but she declined to make a formal complaint. So at that point, the hands of the police.
Why didn't she make a formal complaint?
So the media reports state that she said she was worried about her job, that if she did make a formal complaint, that she might lose her job.
Okay, well, it sounds like a grown-up decision.
I tend to think. I mean, we're seeing a media firestorm at the moment, and I suspect had she made the complaint at the time, we would have seen the same media firestorm. And I just don't see how. I don't see how she could have been fired. So, in fact, so I don't see how her job would ever be. That's my opinion. So now, significantly.
What do you think, Natalie?
There is from things I've read and seen, as a female, it's not that my heart wants to believe it. It's got nothing to do with that, but my brain's saying something else. And it's not saying something else that I don't believe it. I just got questions. So when she apparently woke up and he was raping her or sexually assaulting her, and she apparently said at least 6 times for him to stop, but he didn't. When the security guard found her after he'd left, A, why didn't she call the security guard then? B, when the security guard did find her, why didn't she say, call the police, I was raped? Then the other part that I've read and seen in an interview was where she turned up to work on the Monday, like nothing had happened, and he wouldn't even look at her. And it's like, why did you go to work? If you were just raped and sexually assaulted, how could you go to work and face this man? Like, if it was me, if I did go to work the next day, I would choke him. I would go for the throat. Not saying it's the right thing, but I couldn't just go to work and go, okay, I've got to do my normal routine now. It's Monday.
Now, because
you'd think it'd be quite a traumatizing experience.
Yeah, there's just not. It's not that I don't believe her. It's just, as a female, I don't understand her actions after those 3 days after the event.
And of course, now a former police complaint is being made 2 years after the event, nearly 2 years after the event, with no, as far as I'm aware, no physical evidence. So the officers were cleaned on the Saturday afternoon because there was no knowledge, there was no allegation that any sort of criminal activity had been complained about. So therefore, if there was a crime scene there, it was inadvertently destroyed by the cleaners without them ever knowing. The Australian Federal Police investigated and found that the cleaners and everyone involved in that clean were completely in the clear because there was no suggestion that a crime had been committed.
And at one stage a few days ago, or maybe even last week, they were making out like that was part of some conspiracy to cover it up, that they had the cleaners in, but I was imagining that the cleaners cleaned that place, daily,
exactly.
weekly.
From their perspective, from the perspective of the people who manage the infrastructure, a couple of people have been found in the office, half drunk. Who knows what they've been up to?
That wouldn't be a a one-off kind of scene, I would imagine.
No, exactly, and it's an office from a high-ranking official in the Australian government. So obviously they're going to want to make sure that it's in a good state of repair when everyone comes to work on Monday morning. That seems quite reasonable to me, especially be a different state of affairs if someone made a complaint that nobody had at that stage. Yeah. So if there was physical evidence of a crime, it's long gone.
Yeah, and I'm laughing about other, characters who might have, used their position historically to, wow some lady into, hey, you want to have a go in the minister's office kind of thing, as a bit of a,
a thrill. Yeah.
Sales pitch.
Yeah.
But I guess it's because they would have, this place would be covered in CCTV cameras, and you can kind of determine a degree of drunkenness by how somebody moves and walks. So the fact that they got out of a car or a cab, and then they proceeded to this office together, walking, it kind of points to a level of some consciousness.
Exactly. So she claims that she could barely sign her own name, but as far as I know, she got into the office under her own steam. She wasn't carried in the office. So she signed her name in, being cognizant of that.
That part doesn't kind of hold water. Then that was the question mark that struck me. It's like, okay, well, I mean, he didn't drag her Fred Flintstone style into this office. They walked in it together.
That's my understanding exactly. And I don't think I think there were security guards there at the time when they signed in. So there would have been quite a lot of evidence if he literally dragged her into the office. So no, as far as I understand it, they both walked into the office, even if they were a bit inebriated. But yeah.
I mean, whoever was what? Go ahead, Natalie.
He had his pass, and she had to be signed in as a guest.
Exactly.
That's my understanding. So, if either of them were that far gone, they wouldn't have been able to get in.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly.
They wouldn't be allowed into my office, let alone Parliament House.
This is an extremely secure environment. That's right. And they knew where they were in the building.
That's what I was thinking. I mean, it's like you just can't stumble into this place. And I can imagine there's 24/7 security guys watching multiple TVs in a room. That's their only job, is just to keep an eye on the place. And they're probably giggling behind the TVs. Well, that's because they knew what was going on.
In fact, one of the reasons why they both got in trouble for being in the office apparently is the fact there's sensitive material in the office. So there's who knows what sort of material being kept in the office. And so, of course, this is a highly secure environment, probably one of the most secure places in the entire building, in fact.
Yeah, right.
So
then she, according to her story, they would have had to get into the office. She was able to communicate at least clearly enough with the security guards to get into the building in the first place, which means she had a level, of cognizance about her. And then they get into this office together. Apparently, assumingly they are off the cameras at that stage, so they're not visible anymore. And then she's claiming she woke up under him and told him to stop. So when did she go to sleep?
Yeah, she said she fell asleep on the couch at some point after going into the office. I'm not sure how long. I'm not sure if anyone said actually how long it was between the time they went into the office and the time that she claimed this occurred and that he then left.
That she fell asleep, right?
That's another part I don't understand. If you were conscious enough to know that you're that drunk and that tired, from another interview I saw, they said that because they lived in the same area, they would share this cab. And he said he just has to drop by the office for a minute, and she thought it was a bit strange. If you're that tired, where as soon as you get upstairs, you just fall asleep on the lounge, would you sort of say, I'll drop you off at the office, I'm catching the cab home, I'm too drunk and too tired? Why get out of the cab? Why not have the cab wait for him as he runs in and gets what he has to get? To physically get out of the cab and go into the office, it does. Again, I'm sitting on the fence. There's things that her actions to me just don't add up to where I think there's just too many holes.
It's not going to hold water in court.
And it's 2 years later, where it's going to be his word against hers.
So my concern is
be circumstantial and hearsay, basically.
But my concern is it's so political now that he can't get a fair trial in this country. Yeah, because of because it's now gone all the way to the Prime Minister, and I'm really concerned. I think that just speaking only from what's the information is publicly available. This, as far as I can tell, there's no physical evidence at all, because by the time the complaint was first raised, there was no time. There was all the physical evidence was gone. There must be a dearth of evidence, and yet with the political involvement, I'm really concerned about whether you get a fair trial and whether we might see a conviction anyway.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, he'll hire good lawyers, and I mean, they can't rewrite the law in terms of how, the legal process. I hear what you're saying, but that's not my worry. I guess, they're using it as a sledgehammer against the liberals at the moment, and they're implicating all these different characters, at the highest levels of power in the country is complicit in this situation, in this scene. And we're talking about a grown woman. She was 22 when this happened. So this was 2019. And I mean, it's not, so it's Me Too was well and truly established. And, and women all over the world have been telling their stories and being, given space, to share and being encouraged and being celebrated as a result of it. So, I mean, I find it hard to stomach that she was encouraged to go to the police. She went to the police. She didn't press charges because she's afraid of losing her job. I'm having a hard time buying that.
Mm-hmm. Believe all women. The problem, of course, is
that?
Yeah. I said believe all women.
It's not. It's but it's not. You've got Andrew O'Keefe, that game show host for 7, who was in a few newspaper articles. But have you heard the story break on ABC or SBS? Have they been keeping everybody up to date with what's been going on? He was charged with domestic violence. I mean, this guy was one of the premier ambassadors for White Ribbon,
Yep.
who's been charged with domestic violence, and you're hearing crickets in the media.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's
because he's on the right side of politics, meaning he's, in America, he'd be considered a liberal, he'd be considered on the left, and same in America, the media protects you.
Yeah, what I was getting at is when I said believe all women was that this is the mantra that we've been seeing from I mean, the London Metropolitan Police actually effectively had that as a policy for a long time, although they have actually repealed that recently. But yeah, there is just an assumption that these statements are correct. But I think really it's important that there's judicial independence, and that he gets, if it goes to court, that he gets a fair day in court. I am concerned about biases in the court and political influence on the court. I think this will be a real test of the Australian court system in 2021, of the independence of Australian courts today.
I agree. I hope he gets a fair trial too. I mean, I don't know why he wouldn't. And I mean, I think they're going to be, and I think that's why, because they're trying him in the court of public opinion. Because right. Because they're not going to convict him. They're not going to convict him in court.
Well, I certainly hope not, in the sense that that I'm concerned about.
Guys, I'm just plugging in.
No, you're right. In the sense that I'm concerned about the level of evidence that could be presented in this case, based on public reports.
What do you think? What do you think, Natalie?
As I said, it's one of those things where in your heart you truly do want to believe her, but
why? That just doesn't make sense to me. It's like,
you don't want somebody to be horrible things like this. Like, this is the most disgusting thing that could happen to a woman, and to make it up, you ruin it for every other woman that's gone through it.
I agree.
Makes it harder for
I agree. I mean, if he did it, if he raped her, and that's what the evidence shows. I mean, the guy deserves to get his balls cut off, in my opinion.
But of course,
But if he didn't,
if he's guilty,
if it was consensual, or if it was some blurry version of consensual, where it's like, well, okay, why? Like you said, Robert, why did you get out of the cab? Why did you go in the building? If you're I mean, and I know this all falls under victim blaming, but sorry. I mean, I work with couples. I work with people who, if in a couple's relationship, if one partner is not telling the truth, or if they're blurring reality, or if they're messing with their partner's mind, and you don't address that as their counselor, if you don't call out what's going on in terms of how they're mucking with the reality of the situation, then nothing's going to change. Nothing's going to get better. And I think there's some holes in this woman's story, and I think it sounds to me, I mean, I've certainly been wondering who got to her at what stage, and said, hey, sit on this, and let's wait. There's an election coming up. It sounds like there's been some political strategy going on, and then bang, the second person shows up, the third person shows up, the fourth person shows up, all in. It's like, cue on cue, and then all of the quote unquote journalists on TV are just parroting the same script. The believe all women. Scott and Morrison messed up when he apologized, in my opinion. He should have just said, I didn't know anything about it. If it happened, it's dreadful. But that's for the courts to decide. I got nothing to do with it. And he should have left it there, in my opinion.
No, I tend to agree. But unfortunately, I think politicians these days, they see that there's a large body of there's a large sort of movement
of opportunity.
Afraid they'll go against them if they don't come out and say so. But then he came out and he was criticised for the things he said anyway. Like when he
exactly. Well, if you apologize, you're basically just you're admitting guilt, and then they're going to chop your head off.
That's right. Yeah. Yes. No, that's what we.
And that's the problem I've got with all the political correctness that's being built in, to the media and being transmitted through, every avenue. It's, it's worse in America, but, the winds are blowing in this direction, and it's going to get worse here.
Yeah.
But, I think, the answer is just let the courts decide.
Exactly.
But they're bringing it out to weaponize it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, one of the things we always. But you go.
Considering this was two staffers, it wasn't anybody it wasn't anybody with a title per se. If touchwood,
he was a staffer too.
Yeah, yes, so we're both staffers. So if I got raped, touchwood.
Define staffer for me. What's a staffer? Sorry,
not going to. It's just somebody that works within the government. It's not. They haven't got a title. So they're not the. They're not the governor of this, or they're not the
peon. A peon, basically.
That's pretty much what it amounts to. Yeah.
Right.
It's not going to hit the news. Might hit the local news. It might hit this sort of news. To say that it's not what's happened isn't political, it is too essentially, and I don't mean this in a degrading way, it's essentially two nobodies.
Yeah.
Just happen to work in Parliament House. Now, I work for a big company. If that happened if I was raped by a male staff member, it might get around the company, but it wouldn't become newsworthy?
It's just that it's Parliament House.
Yeah, if it's just because it's Parliament House, then what's the difference between me getting raped in the big company I work in and Parliament House? It's got nothing to do with the Prime Minister. It's got nothing to do with the ministers. It's got nothing to do with whatever title you hold. It's between these two staffers just because it happened in Parliament House. It had nothing to do with security breaching. They got disciplined for the security breach.
That's right.
Right.
Exactly.
Why is it political?
I think
Why
that Brittany Higgins.
Morrison getting slapped on the back of the hand for something that it's actually essentially got nothing to do with him?
I just want to clarify something. The male staff member got disciplined for entering after hours, and that he was advised to leave. I gather that they avoided firing him so he could go get another job. My understanding is that there was a disciplinary process against Brittany Higgins, but when she made the allegation of rape, that process halted. I don't believe she was ever. I don't believe she was ever punished for the breach.
Okay.
I'll just leave
makes
that
you
right.
wonder.
I'll just leave that right.
Wonder.
So, because reading all the news reports on this, I haven't seen any suggestion that she was subsequently punished for that.
Well, I mean, and this, if the journalists were doing real journalism, this is what they would be hashing out. They would be hashing out all the details we're hashing out.
That's right.
And like you said, Nat, you're wondering why it's an issue, but and they're able to push these popular, politically correct feminist narratives, like you said, Robert, believe all women. No, that's what court's for. It's my side of the story, your side of the story. We have legal representation putting that on the table, and then the jury decides in the end.
That's right. I always like to make the point: the police should neither believe nor disbelieve a complainant. If a complaint is made, the job of the police is to investigate it. If there's a case to answer, then they send it on to the prosecution, and then the process proceeds from there. But and that's where one of the places our system is falling down at the moment, where there's pressure on the police in some countries to push these things through.
Robert, can I ask you a question? I just got to talk to the right Rob here. Can I ask you a question with the timeline of late? Did she go to the media before she went back to the federal police?
Well, yeah. Well, yes, because she's gone to the media at the point at which this has become public knowledge, and it's unclear whether she's yet made a formal complaint to police. So I did hear some reference to Wednesday, which of course is today here in Australia. So it's unclear on what day. It may have been a couple of days ago, or it may have been today, but it's whatever is the case, it's quite recent. So absolutely, the media has been involved in this at least a couple of weeks before a formal complaint to police has been made.
So the Australian Federal Police came into it. She said she didn't want to make a complaint because she felt like her job was on the line. They couldn't do anything about it. Then 2 years later, she comes forward to the media, not the federal police, and say, hey, this is what's happened.
Yes, exactly. That's right. So now effectively they're looking at investigating a rape claim that occurred allegedly 2 years ago. There was no physical evidence gathered at the time because the complaint wasn't made. Nobody raised it.
It's his word against her word.
So it'll be an interesting test of our judicial system. I think that it'll be very interesting to see what happens. Now, I'm not sure if you both know, but it's come out in the last couple of days that he's actually gone into a hospital. Apparently, around about the time that she first made the allegation public, he was actually, I think he may be a voluntary patient, but he's actually gone into a hospital.
Reynolds went into the hospital yesterday. Everybody's going to the hospital.
That's right. That's right. Exactly. Yeah, that's right. So I'm not clear that he even knows that the other allegations.
I mean, they would be stressed out of their minds. I mean, this sounds like a shitstorm of epic proportions in terms of how it's being pitched and how it's being played out.
That's right.
And exactly. You got to look at the timing as well. I mean, the Australian of the Year, that Grace Tame, she, for her sexual assaults, she did some fighting in Tasmania so that perpetrators' names could be put in the newspaper or something. But anyway, she
That's right.
got, so I mean, it's out
Actually, it was
there.
victims' names. It was actually victims' names. So I believe the problem was that she wanted to go public, but the law actually prohibited her from going public
Okay.
as a victim. So she
And telling her
campaigned
story.
to basically allow the victims to tell their story. Exactly, that's right. Yeah. So, and I think that I think that's quite reasonable. Whether or not she should have got Australia for the Year for it, I'm not sure. But I think probably allowing people to come out and speak about their own story seems a reasonable thing to do. So,
well, it tells you who's calling the shots on the nomination committee.
yes, exactly. That's right.
And they're certainly not voting for Bettina Arndt.
Especially after the firestorm from poor Bettina last year. So,
I felt so bad for Bettina.
same, exactly. That's right. Yeah.
But it's such a, it just seems so opportunistic. I mean, I've been watching a lot of different news sources for a lot of years, from the left to the right, and most of Australia's media, unless it's Sky News, is ABC, SBS. It's bent to the left, if not the far left. And I mean, and a lot of these talking heads are women. A lot of people they're talking to are women. So you're just getting a very leftist female perspective breaking down this issue, and I don't see them actually teasing out the facts. It's like, well, what do we actually know? That's what we can talk about in a court. A lot of the stuff she's saying isn't going to hold water, and that's, to me, that's the that takes their credibility down significantly.
Yes, well, as I said before, it's going to be very interesting.
I'm not saying this girl wasn't raped. If she was, that's the worst thing that can happen. And like I said, this guy needs to lose his testicles. But if it was some kind of sloppy drunk consensual office thing that she ended up regretting the next day or down the track, and then thought, well, it's not worth pushing with the police, because she had several opportunities in the beginning to say, hey, this went down, and she didn't take them.
Yeah.
And she can make excuses until she's blue in the face as to why she didn't. But who knows what's in her head?
Yeah. So I want to make clear, I've got the same position, that I have no opinion on whether an offence was committed or not. My view is just that there's insufficient evidence to prove it at this point, because there was an opportunity to get the evidence, and that opportunity was, if there was an offence there, that was missed. And now, 2 years down the road, she can open a complaint with the police. If it proceeds at all, based just on what's public knowledge, if it proceeds based on what's public knowledge, I'd really have to question the independence, because there just doesn't seem to be enough. There's a standard that's supposed to be met to even put a matter before courts. They call it a reasonable prospect of conviction, and I just don't see how they can meet that standard given that there's no physical evidence and that a complaint is made 2 years later. And if it does go before the courts and there's a trial, and if there's a conviction, I think that would say a lot about the Australian judicial system today.
I think I agree with everything you just said. And they're using it as a sledgehammer at this stage to pound the Liberals, because
absolutely, it's very political. Absolutely, that's right.
They're pro-labor. They're pro-labor.
Yeah, exactly.
And I mean, and if you heard, you would never hear anybody say that on the news. It's like, okay, this is a political. They're just making political hay out of it, and because it's such a touchy subject, because everybody just the when you hear the word rape, the air in the room just gets sucked out, and nobody wants to touch it with a 10-foot pole, and nobody wants to comment on it because it's so charged.
Yeah. Bettina has made the point that she made this at I think I probably first heard her say it before ICMI 17, but she made the point that the ABC is in breach of its charter because it is actually required to be independent, and I think that's such a good point. 4 years later, still the case, probably been the case for many, many years, and it seems like nobody in government is willing to do anything about it, not the left nor the right.
Well, I don't know why Morrison hasn't taken his position and used some leverage to put some conservative voices into the company. I mean, it boggles my mind.
Yeah, I remember.
I get sick of hearing the liberal perspective all the time. Like, come on, guys, balance the equation a bit.
Mm. I remember when the ABC was independent, when it was fairly independent. When I was younger, it was actually a pretty good agency, and I was quite happy to have my taxes pay for it. But today, I would actually would like to see it privatised because if they're going to be so biased, then now I will offer a caveat in a moment about that. But there is a serious bias in there. I was just going to say I've been interviewed by ABC a few times. And I have to say, there's been a sort of a range of opinions across there. There's a lady who interviewed me 2017 from ABC Radio in Brisbane.
Oh, yeah.
I think she was probably a bit. She probably wasn't when she brought me on. I don't think she really sort of thought I was going to have much substantive to say. But to her credit, the lady's name escapes me now, unfortunately. But to her credit, she listened to what I had to say. She took it on board. She called experts that backed up what I said, and she put it on her show. Wow. Credit to her. But so there's a variation. Not everybody's as bad as everybody else in the ABC, but certainly there's some serious problems in there. So I will offer that caveat.
I'm talking about who you see on the channel, on the TV.
Yeah.
On the primetime news network.
Sorry,
Natalie, I want to hear what you were going to say.
No, I was going to just to back up Rob. I know the particular episode he's talking about on the ABC radio in Brisbane. It's on YouTube. I'll put it in the link down below.
Great. I also wanted to say one other thing, and this is a rare occasion in which I'm going to congratulate the media on something. So listen carefully because you won't hear me say this very often. They have decided not to publish his name, and I really think that is actually admirable because they could have published his name and potentially destroyed him before he's ever gone to court. They've elected not to do so. I think that's fabulous. That's a rare occasion, perhaps, of the Australian media showing some responsibility.
I doubt it. Probably more that Jeffrey Rush won his case and clean somebody's
He's
clout.
not a celebrity,
as they say in Texas. What's that?
I think you're probably right.
He's not a celebrity, so like the man that's been accused of this rape, he's not a celebrity, so of course his name's not going to be released. Like a couple of weeks ago, we actually talked about false allegations, and it was Sasha Mitchell, an American who still acts, but was in a popular family sitcom back in the 90s called Step by Step, and actually mentioned that he lost his job and this was before internet, and I heard it back then, that he lost his job because he was accused of beating up his wife. But I found out years later, and I'm talking about as far as last year, that it is correct. He didn't beat her up. What it was is that she was a drug addict and used to attack him and the children. And it was him pushing her back and grabbing her. And because he's a martial arts expert, he did actually leave bruises. And so he went to jail for 30 days. And he was allowed out on day release because he apparently broke the AVO. and he was out on day release to be able to continue doing this show. And then it happened again, and he wasn't allowed out on day release, and that's when he lost his job. But with this problem with the ex-wife, is he had 4 children with her. He ended up with custody of all the 4 kids and raised them all by himself. And she was only allowed to see him so many times in a year with supervised visits.
Mm-hmm.
So
Wow.
the media, this is me thinking back then in the early mid-90s, that this guy is, is a wife basher. And it wasn't until last year where I watched some stupid movie and looked it up on IMDb and just looked up his details in the trivia part where I found out the truth. But the truth's never been released. It was just, back then he was a wife basher. But the truth never gets released.
That's
so
right.
He got canceled. He got canceled before cancel was a thing.
Yeah. And he was, by the time, I think the show knew, and all of his co-stars knew, and he was allowed back for the last episode of Step by Step. But Sasha Mitchell, look him up. I cannot find any part where he's talking about it, except for this one part on IMDb where he spoke to Entertainment Tonight, and it's in a snippet like this big. But he's now like big, strong muscle man. He's still in the martial arts world. He is more famous than his movies, but he's still acting today. I just always thought he was this wife basher, which turned out to be false. But if you throw shit at someone, and this is where I'm backing up Robert, if you throw shit at someone, it sticks. Whether it's real or not, it sticks. So if they release this guy's name, if it didn't happen, he's always going to be known as the rapist.
Yeah.
Because he's not famous. And Sasha's famous. And it still didn't get released that he was innocent.
Yeah, that'd make a good article, actually. I might look at doing an article on that, actually, just to sort of get some publicity on that gentleman.
Yeah, Sasha, I've tried to.
So you don't reckon this guy's name's going to be leaked? That they're teeing it up?
That's a good
leakage.
Would be leaked. Who knows? I hope not. I really hope not. Officially,
yeah, me too.
Yeah, if the media, if at least if it stays out of the mainstream media, that can keep it sort of down low. Yeah, so I hope his name stays private.
But the more I've heard about this guy, I'm just like, because he's got 4 people claiming either sexual assault or inappropriate.
That's right.
Harassment behavior. He's an idiot.
It's sexual harassment. So
it's like you do.
Great.
No,
now.
A couple. Yeah. Well, I'm talking about the 4th one that came forward most recently. He touched her leg wrong, according to her.
Yeah.
So
it's such a gray area now. It's not the hand down the top or the hand up the skirt. It's you look nice today, or I like your hair today, or I like that outfit on you.
So
it's sexual assault.
Increasing number of countries, unwanted kissing is sexual assault too. So, and I found examples of that from Australia and Canada, as well as other countries where kissing someone without their consent can actually be sexual assault. Which, when you consider that the risks associated with that, like ending up on a register for an unwanted kiss.
It is fraud. No wonder, exactly. These young guys, they don't stand a chance, and they're going to use this to push, the Australian of the Year award, the Grace Tame story, this story. What's her first name? Higgins.
Brittany.
What's Higgins' first? Brittany Higgins. These consent compulsory consent courses, for third graders are going to start showing up in schools. It's coming.
Yep, that's right. It's more make work, more. That's
And
right.
I don't have a problem with conversations around consent
Mm.
in terms of, teaching people how to navigate sexual territory. I mean, everybody needs to learn that, but mostly people learn it by, fumbling around and and generally there's alcohol involved, teenage years, and but it's a really, yeah, it's scary.
It's a much more risky situation, especially for young men today, than it was even in my time, which was, you could say, it was a generation ago. It's a very different situation, and I do worry for them. And as I've always said, I'm doing this for the next generation of men and women, because the women are not going to be better off with what's going on with the men. So whether it's because the men are going to disengage, they are disengaging. They're going to continue to disengage. They're going to be, in many cases, in a growing number of cases, they're quite literally staying away from women because they're afraid of them. The women will not be better off in a world where men have failed.
I mean, it's not doing women any favors. You turn on the TV. I mean, it's men and women, but it's a lot. There's a big focus on women at the moment. Every channel you turn to. I'm a channel surfer. It's just women's victim stories, and it's like it's they're being celebrated, and it's like, yeah, okay, bad stuff happened to you. Sorry, join the human race. Bad stuff happens to everybody, and I'm not taking the piss out of you suffering, but I'm just saying there's a lot more to you than your suffering, and
That's right.
and I think women are being done a disservice when the equation is not balanced by success stories. It's like, hey, I want to hear what inspires you. I want to hear about your wins. I want to hear about what you have achieved, and I want to hear guys' stories too. And guys are
That's
being
right.
drowned out in the
Yep.
media. They're being drowned out in the popular culture, just because they're guys.
So, I mean, I was just going to say, we hear this constantly, of course, but one particular example that I think was just so clear, 3 years ago, 2018, if you watch the BBC, you kept hearing that it was 100 years since women had the vote in the UK. So in actual fact, 2018 was 100 years since the universal male franchise in the UK, not universal female franchise. That's 2028. So you wait, in 2028, they'll be saying it again, 100 years since female franchise, universal female franchise.
So every 10 years.
They all over the men's one. 2018 was 100 years from universal male franchise in the UK, and the BBC just didn't say it.
That's
They
where
kept
all
saying,
men could vote, not just the
exactly.
upper aristocrat types.
Exactly. I mean, a bit off the topic of what we were talking about tonight, but in the UK at the time, estimated around about maybe about 2/3 of men could vote before they had finally emancipated them all and given them all a vote, but franchised them all, I should say. But centuries ago, it had all been based on property ownership, and they found women among the voter rolls. So they found that they'd wondered for a long time whether it was true, and then the voter rolls turned up, and they found that women who owned property were voting before most men. And a few years ago, they even found one where they'd assumed that when it was women voting, they were mostly aristocrats. And they actually found a voter roll that had a couple of aristocratic women, some middle-class women, and a maid. And the maid owned a block of land, so she got to vote.
So
she was a maid.
Basically land ownership that determined it.
Exactly.
But
that's right.
I'm interested to hear from you, Nat, about just in terms of what this is, your sense of what's happening in the popular culture. I mean, am I the only one that's just seeing women, share their victim story after victim story? I mean, is that just me, or is that?
No, I about 7 years ago, I went through about 18 months of hell. Like literally 18 months of hell. to the point where it wasn't that I just couldn't leave my house. It took energy for me to just get out of bed every day. And I will put this out there because I wasn't working. Obviously, it was just disgusting hell for me, and so I lost my house. I lost all my furniture. I was essentially homeless. My sister took me in, got me a new place, and she didn't push me mentally because I was in a bad place. She'd give me like little touches every now and again, but she didn't push me until I was ready. And then she would drop her dog off to me in the morning. So that would get me out of the house because I had to take the dog for a walk. So it was just like baby steps. And it wasn't until I moved into this place here that I fully came into light. So I've got a great job. I love my job. I love my friends. I love the people I work with. I'm actually really lucky. But it wasn't until I moved into here that I fully stepped out of that dark place. I stepped into the light because it's my house, it's my name, it's my money. I saved up for it. It was just I did it. That's what I celebrate. Because I was in such a dark place, I'd rather celebrate the fact that I'm out of it than talk about what happened for me to be in it.
Yep.
Right.
Just say, yeah, I've been there. I've been through shit. If I told you the catalyst of what put me into that dark state, nobody believes me. Even when it happened, people said, no, it didn't happen that way. Right. And I am not a victim. I'll never be a victim. What's happened to me in that 18-month period, things happened that were just life. I was never a victim. But I got myself out of it, a couple of pushes from friends and family, but I dug myself out of that hole.
Nice.
And I came into the light myself. And my mum would be proud of me, my sister's proud of me, my son's proud of me, but I'm proud of me. And that I'd rather, as I said, I'd rather celebrate me being happy and me telling people what I've done to get where I am, to be happy, than dwell on what happened and that be the catalyst. No, the catalyst is here, where I am now. I couldn't have done this 2 years ago. When I did the radio show last year with Marie, I was vomiting the first time I did it. Oh, and I was at work and I was like this, and the boss is saying, you got to calm down. Yeah, I couldn't have done this 2 years ago, and now it's like this is something I truly believe in. This is something and this is something to celebrate for me. Yeah. You're right. Women do play the victim card way too much. Where I'm never going to play the victim card. I'm going to play the let's celebrate life card.
And society encourages women to do it too, and that's the really unfortunate thing. It's constantly casting onto them, you are a victim, and that's Western similar culture is doing that now. And I think it's very damaging for women, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean that's what I'm observing, and I applaud you, Natalie, because it sounds like you had a really rough patch there, and you had some key kind of characters that supported you, and then you got up on your feet again, and then you got your momentum happening, and you started a whole new chapter.
My sister, it was her birthday yesterday.
That's the rest of the story that I want to hear, but they just stop it. I've just had such a hard life. And that, they're walking out of the interview with a Gucci bag and high heels. And I'm like, I can point at people who've probably had a harder life than you.
Yeah.
But I mean, but it's not, I'm not talking about, the making a contest out of it. I'm just saying, everybody, you don't get through. I mean, I've been a counselor 15 years, and I haven't met, I've talked to 2 to 3,000, individuals as clients, and I haven't heard the first story is, I got out scot free.
Mm-hmm.
I have had no suffering. I've had no hard time. I haven't hit rock. Everybody's going through this, and I think to put the emphasis on getting your victim story right and making it airtight, so that you can cancel, someone, or you can take somebody down with it, or you can make some kind of political statement. It's sending the wrong, the very, it's sending very destructive messages to young women,
Yeah, absolutely.
in my opinion.
So we're back.
Brittany Higgins had several opportunities, and it sounds like she was encouraged by senior staff to at least talk to the police about this thing, and she did. She chose not to, as an adult woman, regardless of the excuse she gives. Well, I was afraid I was going to lose my job. So what? Who cares? You're a grown up. If this happened to you, and you wanted justice, then there's a course of action you have to take, and you didn't take it.
Yes. Brittany Higgins was actually quoted recently in the media as saying, I want justice, but in order to get justice, she would have had to have started by making a complaint to the police.
Exactly.
Yeah.
When
We've
it
actually we've tipped over just over an hour. So I don't know if anyone's got any final parting thoughts before we finish up.
I think that one was mine.
I think well done. I think that summarised it well. I was just thinking, why don't we get you on the show another time?
That'd be awesome. I'd love that.
Wonderful. Great. Thanks so much for coming on, Rob.
Yeah, you guys are fun. I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, it's been great. Thanks very much.
This is what we're going to try and do. Now, before we go, I'm going to try something new. So this goes on to YouTube as well. So click the like button, subscribe. It goes onto my channel and Rob's. And let's have some fun with this.
Yep.
And next time, I promise I'll have my technology more sorted.
We want to get this out there. It's not for us to be popular. We want to get voices heard.
That's
and
right.
As a female, I want to be heard, and I want to listen to the guy's point of view. And I think this is how we start. So like, comment, share, subscribe, whatever is happening down here, click it.
Do it.
Thanks very much, everyone. Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye, guys.
Thanks, guys.